Welcome to the Chamber Neighbors Podcast, a show highlighting Chapin's community and commerce. Now here's your hosts, Greater Chapin Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Paul Sadler, and Chapin Neighbors Magazine's Daniel Rendelman.
This is Daniel with the Chapin Neighbors Magazine.
And I'm Paul Sadler with the Greater Chapin Chamber of Commerce.
And Paul, on our podcast today, we have a
treat.
I think we
do, Daniel. We've got a gentleman in the room right now who we've known for several years and,
right.
and are grateful for all that he does and grateful for his friendship. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you listening, we have Mr. Doug Collier with Apex Tactical Solutions.
Good morning.
Hello, Doug. Good to see you.
Good morning.
I wish everyone could see the beard.
The beard's on point.
It really is. It's always...
It's pretty bad.
And
it's like really, really awesome.
One thing I love about Doug is as intimidating as the beard is, it's the big smile behind it.
Absolutely.
It just warms him up.
Anyway.
Anyway.
The beard and bald head.
Oh, no, there you go.
That's why we get along so
well.
Okay,
that's what it is.
I think that's fine.
I'll join the club one day, I'm sure.
Maybe one day, Dave.
So Doug, Apex Tactical, tell us a little bit about that, about yourself and about the business.
Well, I appreciate the chance to be on here with you guys this morning. I started Apex Tactical Solutions in 2020 after I retired from the FBI and was looking for an opportunity to leverage some of the training opportunities that I had specifically in the firearms and tactical training world to my friends and neighbors. And so we started the company and began doing classes, and here we are 4 years later. And so
starting a business, you said in 2020. Well, we all know what happened in 2020. There was this little pandemic going around. That must have been tough to get something started, right?
It was challenging in its own way. I mean, fortunately, we were sort of on the backside of that when I retired. And so by the time I was up and running, plus the nature of my business was one that had a little bit of social distancing built into it as far as our environments and that kind of thing. So it wasn't too bad, but yes.
So why did you start Apex Tactical Solutions with firearms and the knowledge and safety of that? So what sort of led you to that?
Well, over the course of my career and working with law enforcement professionals and kind of seeing sort of both sides of the training with the civilian side as well as law enforcement, it became pretty clear that there was a lack of really solid training, and that there were a lot of my friends and neighbors who could who could benefit from quality firearms training to make them responsible firearms owners, as well as empowering them with knowledge of the law and use of force so that they would survive the entire conflict, not just the physical, but the legal as well.
So you're training these civilians in law and firearm protection. What qualifies you to do that? Like, give us a quick recap of your history, your background.
So I grew up in a family where we had guns and had exposure to them. So I learned basically how to handle them and use them at an early age. After graduating from college in 1992, I was commissioned as a United States Army officer and spent 5.5 years in the Army. So that was obviously a profession of arms, and spent a lot of time around firearms there. Joined the FBI in 1997, spent about 23 years as an FBI agent. And during that time, in addition to carrying a gun every day as part of my duties and responsibilities, I became a firearms instructor, tactical instructor, and then picked up some other certifications along the way with the NRA and things like that. So when I retired, my resume was pretty solid in the world of firearms instruction, and so it definitely helped.
Let me ask you, hold on.
Okay.
Let me ask this question. So have you ever seen the movie Major Payne?
Yes.
Okay, so he has a blindfold on and he's doing this, taking apart the gun. Can you be blindfolded and take apart a gun? Can you do it upside down?
Can I, or can it be done?
Can you?
I've never tried that, so I'm not going to speculate as to the success or not of that.
Major Payne. Yes, you hear it first
here.
But it is a classic.
It is a good movie.
It is a classic. So
it is.
And it's also kind of cool, like, we know someone that was in the FBI.
Yeah.
Like, that I really know, right? Because I might have known people in the past that were in the FBI, but I don't know that they know that I know.
Ooh. But now they know.
But now that they know. So,
now they know.
Maybe they know. Maybe they know. However, years in the FBI, and you were doing teachings and classes and things there. Is that right, as an instructor?
Yes. I spent my first 10 years in the Atlanta field office, where I worked mostly violent street gangs and drugs. I was on the SWAT team there for a number of years. Then I went to the FBI Academy in Quantico, where I spent 8 years as a tactical instructor. And then we came back to Columbia in 2015, where I finished my career working violent crimes here in the Midlands. So bank robberies, carjackings, kidnappings, that sort of thing. So
you've seen a lot.
Yes, it was a great career.
Wow.
Don't regret a second of it, and don't miss it.
From Atlanta to Quantico to Columbia.
Yes.
Out of the Atlanta or Columbia, it's worst.
Well, I mean, I think the sheer size of Atlanta and the obvious known problems there would obviously make it probably a more dangerous city in terms of just raw numbers. But Columbia,
there's crime everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's the traffic in Columbia.
And the gangs and drugs seem to transcend our entire country, and no matter the size of the community, we see gangs and drugs, and they're very closely tied together anyway. So,
well, hearing of your background, it tells folks you know what you're doing. You've got the experience, you've got the coaching and training, and what I love too is your ability to communicate things to the students and to people. I've been in one of your classes and going in not knowing anything, leaving like, wow, I really understand things there. And so I guess the other part of that question is like, why? Like, okay, you've done this, you've seen the need that is there. You've been able to, start this business. So what all does Apex Tactical do today?
So we have kind of a multifaceted approach. The primary thing we do are our firearms classes, and that's going to be pistol, rifle, shotgun from beginner to advanced. I do the concealed weapons permit class that is now being basically orchestrated by SLED, whereas before it was done by me individually as a SLED certified instructor. We do home defense courses. One of the things that I do is go out to people's homes and do on-site assessments of their homes, make recommendations about ways to make their home safer. And so, and then we also do active assailant training for businesses, churches, and schools.
That's really good for our Chapin and greater Chapin business community to know.
Right.
You want to be able to protect your assets. Right, either with cameras outside or just being vigilant on your surroundings and knowing that I'm glad you said that, because I think that would make one for a great lunch and learn for the chamber. I know you spoke a few years ago to the chamber as a whole. Maybe we need to bring you back for that, because I think that's just so important. We spend so much time working on our business and in our business, but we don't think about protecting our business like we protect it through cybersecurity and IT and those things. We need to be able to physically protect our businesses.
And he mentions that.
Great point.
Sadly, he mentions the churches. I know that you've worked with several churches and helped them with their security. And that's just the state of the world today. But being able to go in and help is pretty fascinating. And so with Apex, these classes, you mentioned the CWP classes and some changes.
Right.
Why is that important to our listeners to kind of know about today?
Well, as most people may or may not know, the law changed in South Carolina earlier this year, and we went to a constitutional carry state. And what that means is
you just carry the Constitution.
I wish.
That'd be fun.
It would be. And let me be careful to say that this new legislation is definitely a win for the Second Amendment. So we have to acknowledge that. But the cost of that in terms of this new law is that it removed the requirement for a concealed weapons permit and the training that goes along with that in order to carry concealed. And so now you have people who are not trained who are carrying concealed handguns. And that training piece is such a critical component. And I say that both professionally and personally. In the years I've been teaching these classes, I have been sadly astonished at the lack of awareness by most people on what the law says, both the Constitution and the South Carolina state law about firearms and use of force. And so that's been one of my big pushes in my classes, is to teach the law and the use of force, so people are making informed decisions. And that's really,
you got to know what you can do and can't do in different situations.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, you have to know that, because the law is the law.
Absolutely.
And the law isn't going to change just because you didn't know the law.
And the reality is now you have people who are not going to take this training or any training, and they may wind up on the wrong side of the law because they were ignorant of it.
Right.
And so,
But they watch TV and they learn the law from Law and Order. Is that not right?
not helpful.
Not the best place.
So the news and the media will not give proper, correct information about.
I know you find that hard to believe, but it's yes. But to your original question, Daniel, the change is that now this to try and bridge the gap between no training being required, the legislature has directed SLED to provide free training. So now the concealed weapons permit class is free of charge to anybody who wants to sign up through the SLED website. You go in and register, you pick your county and an instructor and a date that works for you, and then you come to the class and it costs you nothing.
Wow.
Other than whatever ammunition you bring to shoot the
So
qualification.
this may be a silly question, Doug, but I'm curious. When you're coming in for the CWP class with you, do you have to bring your own firearm? I mean, I don't know if that's a silly question or not.
No, it's not silly at all. So you certainly can, and I would encourage somebody who has a firearm that they plan on carrying, they should obviously qualify with that gun just to continue becoming more familiar and proficient with that.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone doesn't have a firearm, then at least my company, I have rental guns that I can provide along with the holster to get them through that course. And one of the things that we do at Apex is that if somebody is looking to purchase their first gun and they've come to a class, then I will meet them at the gun store and give them advice,
recommendation
from our side of the counter.
Right.
Not saying that they would ever get bad advice from the other side of the counter.
Right. No.
But I just, to try and help them determine pros and cons, and does this gun fit me for what I want to carry it for, and just try to help them make an informed purchase.
So let's say okay, let's talk about my wife. She wants a firearm.
Okay.
Do we get her the firearm first? Do we go to the gun store with Doug first and buy that firearm? Or do we go through the training classes first and then say, okay, maybe I really do want a firearm?
Or like the back alley somewhere.
No, not in the back. We're going to do this legit. So, what comes first, chicken or the egg? Do we go buy the firearm first, or do we go through the training first?
Great question, and the answer is it really doesn't.
Doesn't matter.
With my company, it doesn't matter, because if you come out with no gun and you rent one of mine or you use one of mine, we're going to talk about pros and cons. And you'll already have had the chance to shoot at least one of mine, to kind of get a feel for, does this feel like it fits my hand or not? Then when we go to the gun store, we can have them bring a bunch of guns out on the counter, and you can hold them. Buying a firearm is a very personal purchase, and I've known a lot of very disappointed husbands and boyfriends who wanted to surprise their wives or girlfriends with a gun,
right?
And then they ended up hating the gun because it didn't fit their hand, right? And so to avoid that unpleasantness, we have them bring out a bunch of guns and talk about pros and cons, lights, optics, all the things that you can put on these guns to make them more effective. The most important thing is, does it fit my hand? And so
gotcha.
There's no one right way to do it.
I do think it's a very romantic gift, though, Paul.
It does sound kind of romantic, doesn't it?
If you get the right one, it's perfect.
But if I choose the wrong one,
so I don't see her with a double barrel shotgun. I don't see that.
Probably not. I would imagine something pink.
Something pink. Very pink. Very pink. She could, use and put her accessorize.
Accessorize for gun. Yes.
It does happen.
I've had students who demanded a pink gun, and their husbands found them for them.
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
If you've been down to the gun store, it's like a bag of Skittles in that gun counter. You can get them any color you want.
Jeez. Yes, give me something black.
And I'll say, from my background and experience growing up, we were not around any firearms. And so I've been, honestly, a little standoffish. And so because of my background and not scared, but that's
a lot of power in your hands.
It is a lot of power in your hands. And, I have a hard time using a cell phone at times. So I'm like, oh, then going to one of your classes, it really, I left there being more comfortable thinking of protection. Right. And I didn't rush out and go purchase a weapon in that moment. However, I felt more educated, which then gave me more confidence.
You were empowered. Doug empowered you to feel comfortable.
I think that's really part of your classes of what you do. It helps folks, right?
It is. And one thing about me that some people probably find a little bit peculiar is I teach guns as a last resort. Mm-hmm. If I can teach someone how to identify the problem and therefore avoid the problem, that's the win. Mm-hmm. The last thing I want is someone to be involved in an armed confrontation. And if we can avoid that, that is absolutely the win. Now, sometimes the gun is the only answer, but I do teach the guns as this is a last resort. And I think that's important. And the other thing is, it's not my job to try and persuade or dissuade somebody or even to encourage or discourage. My job is to tell them the truth about what I know to be fact so that whatever decision they make is then informed. If they, there are people who I've talked to who want no part of guns, and I respect that. Just understand the cost of not having a gun may be high if it ever comes. And so that's part of my teaching style, is just to tell the truth and provide factual information so that people can make an informed decision.
I like it.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, speaking of facts, there's got to be some myths out there. How about some myth busting?
Like holding a gun sideways and stuff like that.
You don't do that?
I see that in the movies. It's weird.
You don't do that?
No, I don't do that.
Every time I grab a water gun, I'm going gangsta.
You turn it sideways?
I'm going gangsta. So there's got to be some myths out there besides that.
I've had so many people, usually guys, come to the classes and they very quickly tell me they've been shooting for their entire lives. Sort of to preface, I guess, the day's events. And I always smile and say, that's fantastic. I can't wait to see you at the range. And then we go to the range, and then they shoot, and then they look at their feet, and I say, your whole life or just part of it? And so to the myth is that training is not necessary. There are those people who literally believe that people are born with an innate ability to safely and effectively handle and use firearms. And my experience tells me that's just not true. Just not true. Exposed to firearms is one thing. Trained to be competent and safe and proficient is something entirely different, which is why I have continued, despite the constitutional carry and removing the requirement of training, I have continued to try and continue that drumbeat of training is necessary. And sadly, with firearms, a one-time installment is simply not sufficient, right? These skills are rapidly diminishing and they will disappear if you ignore them for a period of time. I've got a couple of students, a small handful, that are what I call my frequent flyers. They're very consistent. They come out with me once every 4 to 6 weeks, and their arc of improvement is noticeable. I also have some who come out once every 4 or 5 months, and inevitably we end up having to start back over again, which is fine. I mean, it's true. That training is better than no training,
right?
But in order to really, really escalate your firearms proficiency, intentional, consistent training is invaluable.
So you do offer things past the initial training class, and they can continue to own their skills and get better with the safety of the firearm, shooting the firearm. Well, that's good to know, because it's, if you don't use it, sometimes you lose it.
Absolutely.
Right? And so being proficient with that and so in the quick question, in the CWP class, are you shooting as well?
Yes. One of the requirements to pass that training is to fire a 25-round live fire qualification course. And that's normally done at the end of the day.
Okay.
But
so even with somebody that has absolutely no experience with firearms, you're able to train and teach them a little bit in that time to shoot a little bit, or is it? I know I know it's different for everyone.
So I will tell you that the correct answer is that the CWP is not a training course. It's
okay.
It's not a gun class. It's a class that has firing as a component of it. Having said that, I've been able to at times coach people, because I have folks show up who've never fired a gun before. And I'm quick to tell them, listen, there's a very high probability that you're going to pass this qualification course, because frankly, it's not overly challenging. And I think that anybody that has fired it would agree with me. The danger there is somebody who passes on paper but has zero proficiency with the firearm. I mean, this class literally, not this class, this qualification course literally can be shot by somebody for the first time ever, and they can pass it because of just the size of the target and the distances we shoot and the requirements on it. And so I'm quick to tell them, listen, please don't take this quote unquote pass as being the same as proficient.
Right.
I said, please, whether you come back with me or with somebody else, another reputable instructor, please continue your training so that you've not just got the permit in your wallet, but you've got actual training to back that up.
It's not the Wild West,
Right.
hopefully
No.
not, at least. So
It's not.
So that's good. And then that training, of course, with Apex that you continually offer is key, and that's what I hear from you, which I think is key. So let me ask you, shifting a little for a moment, if I can, Doug, when you're not working with Apex and firearms and instructions, what do you spend your time doing?
Well, you guys, we've known each other for a couple of years now, right? So y'all know my faith background.
Yes.
And this entire company to me is really at its core a gospel ministry, the ability to do that. And so for me, I'm very active in my church here in Chapin, the Chapin Baptist Church. I'm a Sunday school teacher there and an elder. And so we stay very active in our church. I spend time with my family. I enjoy obviously all the things that Chapin has to offer with hunting and fishing and outdoor stuff. But I would say my favorite activities are spending time with my family and then also with my faith family in ministry in the area.
And I will say your Sunday school classes on YouTube helped me get through some times. I mean, if you think about during the pandemics and after that, I watched many of those. So very good stuff. They're still out there.
Thank you.
I believe, and really enlightening. And as you said, you pillar in the community that really you shine the light everywhere you go. What's maybe something that you wish people knew about your business on that side?
So I guess one thing I would like people to know about the business, and it's hard to get from a website and from a background or a resume, is that when you come to one of my classes, I'm going to be genuine. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be professional. I'm going to keep you safe. There's a lot of people in the industry, and go on YouTube and type in gun instructor and let the games begin. There are a lot of instructors who I've seen both in their classes as well as watching their classes, where it seems like the approach seems to be one of domineering, sort of overbearing, intimidating, and I'm not sure why they feel that's necessary. I never have felt that way. I feel like that for many people, the idea of firing a handgun is very terrifying. And I want to sort of help shepherd them through that process in a way that they're comfortable, knowing that they're being kept safe and that they're getting good information and good instruction, but that they're not worried about the next thing that's going to come out of my mouth. Right? I want them to know they could bring their 7-year-old son out there for a class on firearm safety and not have to worry about what I'm going to say.
Right.
And that to me is very important.
That's important.
And it ties back to what I'm supposed to be doing as a faith example. I mean, that's the light that I'm supposed to be shining is that. And I don't always do it perfectly, and there are many times that I miss, but that is the focus of my personal teaching style as well as the company.
Man, that's so good to know. That's so good to know. So good for our listeners to hear that they can bring their 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old for some firearm safety, and they're not worried about what their kid is going to hear.
Right.
Because that's important to a lot of people. Some, they don't mind, but I know a lot try to shelter their kids from hearing that type of thing at that young of an age.
Right.
And so, man, I appreciate that. I really do. Doug, we're going to be wrapping up here in just a moment, but how can our listeners learn more about what you do?
Well, obviously they can, the website we have is www.apextactical.net. And on that website has all the classes that we teach, my background, sort of the company philosophy, and all those sort of things. And so that's the best way to do that. And then, of course, my phone number's on there. I advertise in the Chapin Neighbors magazine.
Yes,
and
sir.
So
Right.
you can find me there as well.
Good articles there for folks to read from.
Thank you.
And since we're plugging that, we're also going to plug that Doug is a partner of the Greater Chapin Chamber of Commerce, where you can see his information on chapinchamber.com.
Absolutely. So,
and when you go, hey, listen, I'm showing the guys right now some awesome pictures. There's Doug, I think you missed your call as a model. There's some really good, awesome pictures of you. I think they're you on this website too. So our listeners, apextactical.net, and you can see some really cool stuff that Doug offers for the community. And
we'll drop that in the description there.
Will.
All of our listeners. Anything else that you'd like folks to know about Apex?
No, just that photo you referenced, and it ruined my undercover career. Just for what it's worth, that was in the Atlanta.
Really? Oh, really?
That photo showed up in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
No way.
In the wake of the courthouse shooting back in 2005, and they put that in the
Oops.
Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Oops.
So
did you have a conversation with that reporter?
No.
No?
What's to be said?
Can't do anything now, right?
Nope.
I remember that happened to me.
Really? When you were undercover? That's another episode of the Chapin Neighbors
to be continued.
Podcast.
And being said, I do think this has got to have another part to this conversation. There's so much to learn from Doug about the industry, about the safety and the changes that are taking place. You mentioned some of the classes are free that you offer. Is
the CWP class?
The CWP class is free, and you don't even have to own a weapon.
Right.
Wow.
Now, just to make sure I'm clear, so if you come to the class and you don't have a weapon, then you have to rent one of mine. So there is a cost for that. The actual cost of taking the class, which used to have its own fee associated with it, is now free of charge.
I see no reason for folks not to take it, especially if they usually have a weapon. So really great things. Thank you so much for sharing. This has been a treat.
It's been a treat, an enlightening treat.
An enlightening treat.
It has.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, guys.
This has been the Chapin Neighbors Podcast, where we highlight all that makes our community special. We hope you enjoyed our time together. Please like, subscribe, and share the Chapin Chamber Neighbors Podcast.